I don't think there's any way the US under Trump is going to obstruct what Israel aims to do. So it's not just Ben Gvir saying that the ceasefire was a sham. It's Netanyahu. Israel has violated every ceasefire since 1948, and they do so in order to keep the pressure on their perceived enemies.
Max Blumenthal just revealed Israel's sinister plan to resume the genocide in Gaza, and in this clip, he gets into the real reasons why the ceasefire wasn't designed to last, why it's not going to bring about a peace, and why even key officials in the Israeli government, in the Israeli cabinet, are pledging to resume the genocide. So let's get right into it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Max, because this came from Rubio. Is chastised the Israeli Knesset for enacting legislation that imposes Israeli law in the West Bank, which is the legal equivalent of annexing it.
Well, they don't want the United States, whether it's a Republican or Democratic administration, there are two things they don't want. They don't want Israel to establish borders or to grant a Palestinian state. They want to keep a peace process or some phony process going that leads towards a Palestinian state, but ultimately ends up nowhere. And at the same time, they do not want Israel to declare that the West Bank is part of quote unquote Israel or Greater Israel, because it will mean officializing and formalizing Israel as an apartheid state. And Israel will be required under international law to provide for the population in the West Bank, as it did before the establishment of the Palestinian Authority. And they had to provide for like their postal services, sanitation, those kinds of things. So the contradictions are being exploded by the incipient religious nationalist movement in Israel, which has key positions in Netanyahu's coalition. Bezalel Smotrich, who's openly called for Jewish settlement in the Gaza Strip just a few days ago while holding a Torah scroll at a public event. And they would like to annex the West Bank, but this is something Netanyahu understands will lead to an international crisis. And so they want to continue to keep the West Bank in a gray zone as Israel de facto annexes what's known as Area C, which are the most arable areas with the most water and the lowest Palestinian population.
Yeah, Max is right. They want to expand their West Bank settlements. They want to do that in Syria and Lebanon as well. Area C being parts that are not occupied by the IDF. It occupies something like 60% of the West Bank. You had Itamar Ben-Gvir also in the Israeli cabinet pledging to continue the fighting, saying, hey, the time for ceasefire is over. We got the hostages back. Let's just resume this genocide, something that, you know, skeptics of this Israeli regime and the U.S.-Israeli alliance have said all the time is on their minds. That is their aspirations. That is their true plans. It isn't peace with the Palestinians and any kind of establishment of the Palestinian state. So yeah, Max is right. Trump's trying to walk this tightrope that gets him away from some of the most contentious things that are putting pressure on him from critics within the United States, but he's not going to do anything if Ben-Gvir or Katz or Smotrich or Netanyahu just unfurls the biggest bombing campaign that they've unleashed yet. No aid to Israel will go away. That's the toxic ramification of the Israel first mentality in Washington.
The most land across the West Bank, and that's where much of the settler terror is taking place right now.
How can the United States stop Israel from annexing the West Bank? They're not going to stop sending military supplies, are they?
They're not going to be able to stop it. There will be pressure from the EU and obviously pressure from the UN. And the United States is playing this dual role of condemning the annexation of the West Bank while supporting every single action that Israel wants to take there, including the U.S. defunding the Palestinian Authority, which the U.S. has funded.
That says it all right there, right? This is just an optics move to say, hey, you can't annex the West Bank. You can't annex Gaza. You're not going to be able to get away with that. You're not going to be able to do that. J.D. Vance said that on the tarmac a day or two ago. They're not going to annex the West Bank. Well, what will happen if they do that and put into that a military invasion and an actual annexation that leads to a de jure Israeli control over the West Bank? What will happen? Literally nothing. That's the answer. No aid will be withdrawn. If Netanyahu and Trump clash, no aid will be withdrawn because of the power of AIPAC and the Israel lobby. Miriam Adelson didn't give Trump $1 million for nothing. She did it to stack his cabinet with Zionists and make sure that he toes the Zionist first, Israel first line on every single thing. And this is no different. Israel could bomb England and they'd still receive U.S. aid. They just bombed another U.S. ally in Qatar. They're still going to receive aid.
And the Palestinian Authority is the last thing between a full-on insurgency in the West Bank and what is the current status quo,
Right.
which is sort of a low-intensity Israeli war on the entire population and a insurgency in the northern West Bank. There's really no. I don't think there's any way the U.S. under Trump is going to obstruct what Israel aims to do, which is to consolidate its control in the West Bank without annexation. I mean, that's what the national security leadership in Israel wants to do.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with them, and everything leads us to that take, right? You know, you can listen to the words of these people in rhetoric and then look at their actions, and the actions speak much more, truly and according to their ambitions than their words do. So, again, this is just kind of a propaganda campaign to make you think that this administration's, going to have serious consequences for Israel if they annex the West Bank, but they won't.
Right. Speaking of the national security leadership, and we'll segue to Gaza because of this horrific statement that Ben-Gvir made, but has Ben-Gvir actually given out automatic weapons to settlers in the West Bank with which to kill Palestinians whose homes they want to steal?
Well, this happened in early 2024 when they deputized the most fanatical settlers in the West Bank. They got U.S. automatic, they got like U.S. M4s. Some of them may have gotten M16s. They were deputized and given Israeli army uniforms, and they proceeded to cause a wave of terror across the West Bank. So that's something that has already taken place. This is Ben-Gvir's private army, the same way that ICE is Stephen Miller's private army in the U.S., but they have much more power and they're acting against what's considered a terrorist population. So this is nothing new.
Here's Ben-Gvir 2 or 3 days ago in front of an Israeli flag saying, why wait? Let's resume the war. Chris, number 17.
Right now, we have the opportunity, especially today, to stop everything and say, for a moment, the hostages, thank God, life has returned. That was the main argument for why we are not continuing the war. And now we need to return to fighting. We need to go back to war. We need to unleash the gates of hell upon them.
Just think about that. Unleash the gates of hell upon them. Zionists and Israel firsters in the United States have been arguing profusely that they just want peace, that they just want the hostages back. Well, here's Ben-Gvir in the Israeli cabinet, one of the most powerful officials in Israel. Smotrich said something similar, says the fighting needs to resume. And by fighting, he means the genocide that's bankrolled by the United States, the criminal regime in control of my country.
Need to unleash the gates of hell upon them. Wasn't the whole ceasefire a scam?
Well, every ceasefire with Israel is a scam. And right now, J.D. Vance, who's not playing any meaningful role in the Trump national security decision-making team, is in Israel or has been in Israel as the babysitter to try to enforce the ceasefire.
Great line, my friend.
Yeah, I've used it over the years because there's always a babysitter. Like Obama was the babysitter in the mid 2010s, and now it's fallen to J.D. Vance, who clearly doesn't like Netanyahu and has no leverage to exert on him because the Trump administration won't suspend weapons to Israel. In fact, Netanyahu delivered an address in Hebrew. This is where he's candid and actually reveals the truth in Hebrew, in which he said that Donald Trump and Joe Biden before him gave him all the weapons we need to resume the war at a time of our choosing, and we will use new tactics. So it's not just Ben-Gvir saying that the ceasefire was a sham. It's Netanyahu.
It certainly is, and he's been pretty clear and open about that, isn't he? And he's right that Israel's violated a host of ceasefires, not only in this theater, but also in its wars versus Lebanon, where it invaded Lebanon, something like 4 or 5 times over the course of several decades. Israel is known to violate ceasefires, and don't even take it from me. Hey, I'm a non-interventionist, anti-Israel dissident, right? I don't want any U.S. aid to go to Israel. I get that, but look this up on your own. Israel is known to violate ceasefires. This time was no different, where they killed hosts of Palestinians even during that ceasefire, and violated other conditions of the ceasefire, including only letting 300 trucks of aid into Gaza instead of 600, then threatening to cut it all off, and I think ultimately cutting it off for some time, when they said the Palestinians were slow rolling the remains of dead Israelis. Slow rolling the remains of dead people, which is not nothing, but that is their justification to put this genocide back on the throats of these poor beleaguered people. Just insane.
They've already conducted very violent, deadly attacks inside the Gaza Strip on what appears to be false pretenses. This was last Sunday. Israel claimed that a Hamas team attacked Israeli soldiers in Rafah and killed like 3 of them. However, Rafah is completely destroyed. It's depopulated. It's behind the 53% line. It would be very, very difficult for an Al-Qassam team to enter that area and attack. And a senior White House official told the American Conservative and other media publications that they all know in the White House that it was actually an old IED that the soldiers ran over, and Israel used this as a pretext to violate the ceasefire, kill scores of people in the Gaza Strip. The attacks have continued. There isn't sufficient aid coming into the Gaza Strip as according to the deal, and Israel has kept the Rafah crossing closed.
Exactly right. We knew that Israel violated this ceasefire, even notwithstanding the merit of the arguments that, Palestinians had done that through that RPG they talked about. Well, Israel is the one that's killed about 100 Palestinians since the ceasefire. That isn't Hamas. That isn't the Palestinians. And when that happens, they just take the genocide back to the Palestinians, where about 20,000 children have died in this conflict. Children that they just call human shields. Oh, we can't call them Hamas, I guess, because we can't get away with that. They're just human shields. Collateral damage. To get to these other guys, we had to kill them. And that's just justified, I guess. That would not fly anywhere else. It wouldn't fly in the United States, where Zionists justify that happening in Israel. You couldn't, as a criminal, take children into a school, drop bombs on the school, and not be charged with premeditated murder. And that's what the IDF is guilty of.
Israel has violated every ceasefire since 1948, and they do so in order to keep the pressure on their perceived enemies, in order to consolidate the control over the land they've gained, in this case 53% of the Gaza Strip, and to impose their ethno-supremacist regime on it. So there's no way that Donald Trump's signature peace initiative, for which he believes he deserves the Nobel Prize, will hold under the current circumstances, in which the babysitter is actually the enabler and won't take away the candy in the form of 2,000-pound bombs and spare parts for F-35s from the predator state.
Yeah, no doubt. The whole babysitter thing is just for optics. Listen, no Israeli aid is at threat, no matter what Israel does. Like I said earlier in the video, Israel could pretty much bomb Japan or England and the U.S. wouldn't withdraw aid. They just got away with murdering people in Qatar, another U.S. ally, bombing them to prevent negotiations. And there's one of the biggest U.S. bases in the Middle East is in Qatar. And we just, he made Bibi apologize. Oh, wow. He's so enraged, right? Well, if this actually panned out as it would to any other country that was guilty of the same offense, they would lose all U.S. aid quite easily. He could sell that with his massive cult of personality and his popularity within his base, controlling both houses of Congress. If you really wanted to curtail this madness, this insanity, this murder on behalf of this foreign regime that the U.S. is bankrolling, you could end or at least threaten aid to Israel, but he won't do that. And meanwhile, you have the Israelis, including Netanyahu himself, talking about resuming the war with Iran again. Hey, he appeared with Ben Shapiro a few days back saying, hey, you know, Iran is now, again, developing a missile that could put New York City, Boston, Washington, or Miami under their atomic guns. We need to resume bombing Iran. He's always wanted regime change there. He doesn't want it with his own men. He wants it with U.S. boots on the ground, because there's no real case in U.S. history where a regime change happens just from bombings. It's got to be an internal or an external coup or regime change based on boots on the ground. They want U.S. boots on the ground. I hate to say. That has been the plan the whole time. You knew this propaganda was going to kick up again. And if you remember what I said about that in the past, I was actually kind of happy how the Trump administration was selling this, saying, oh, we think we took out their entire nuclear program. We think we got it all, even though indications were they probably got a lot of the enriched uranium out of at least one of those facilities known as Fordo. And, you know, it was just a matter of time before this propaganda kicked up again. I said that back in my videos at that time. Go look at those summer videos if you don't believe me. But that's exactly what's happening now. Hopefully this president and his neocon, you know, laden administration doesn't kick up with that propaganda again, because this is going to be a continuous thing, you know, as long as Netanyahu and his villains in the Likud coalition are in power. But what do you think? Do you think that this genocide will resume, that it's, you know, very clear at this point based upon what Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and Netanyahu have said? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Judge Napolitano. Awesome program. Great guest. Love Max. He's the best on these issues. Follows them super close. And if you like this video, please consider becoming a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button below. If you do that, you can get access to all of my videos before they go live to the general public on my channel. And if you want a free copy of my ebook, Compact of the Republic, the League of States and the Constitution, go to libertyvault.net. It's also in a link in the description down below. No obligation. It's absolutely free. Click that link. Sign up. It'll be emailed right to you. That's my gift to you. It's my tale of how the decentralized political system of the United States was perverted and transformed into a centralized empire that we have today. And all these empire building schemes, including the one in Israel, is totally backward. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.